Hi, everyone. I am Donna Reed, and this is Donna Reed Talks Voice. And today we're going to have a little bit of discussion with the people who were in the last three episodes. And Nellie's going to lead the discussion, my amazing producer, director, editor, videographer, everything, all around amazing person, Nellie Beavers. So take it away, Nellie.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us today. Um, one of the interesting things I found when you were each giving your intros was that you're all teachers of some sort. Danielle, I think that you lead your worship sessions as well? Perfect. So you all have groups of people that are singing with you kind of all of the time, whether they're your students or your choirs or however it may be. And so one of the first questions I'd like to ask is well, first and foremost, we'll go around and just tell us where you are and what affiliation you have with teaching. And then we'll talk a little bit about that for a few minutes. So, Steve, I'll go ahead and start with you.
Sure. I teach vocal choral music and mariachi at a performing arts high school in El Centro, California, and I've been teaching for 30 some years, and definitely utilize everything I've learned from Cornelius um, exclusively.
Great, amazing. And Rebecca, how about you? Where do you teach? What's your student body like?
Well, I teach at a music school, mostly like one-on-one. Sometimes it's a group of two. I'm pretty new at this. I'm doing this for like 1.5 years now. And my students are like from 9 years to about 60 years. So it's quite a difference. And yeah, that's pretty much what I do.
Amazing. And you're in Germany, correct?
I'm in Germany, right?
Perfect. And Danielle, how about you? Where are you, and what's your student body like?
I'm in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, and I lead worship at a House of Prayer and also Global Awakening. So I mean, age range, I mean, kids all the way up through um, very aged. But yeah, so just all ages, yeah.
Amazing. And so in teaching groups or small groups in teaching multiple people or having multiple people that you're singing with, um, what do you find to be a challenge in I'll start with Steve and Danielle in the choral settings, particularly I know mariachi is a totally different beast than worship. Um, what are what do you find to be challenging in the group setting for singing?
Well, in the choral setting, the biggest challenge is technique. There's really not a lot of good examples for students' models right now. So they'll come in singing with a really driven chest voice, afraid to abandon it because it's what they know and it's what their friends know, and helping them discover what their own authentic sound is as opposed to duplicating the sound of what they hear on their devices. That becomes the challenge. That being said, once they discover, hey, I can sound, oh my gosh, or yeah, like we were talking in the lesson, the mix of it, they grasp the concept of the registers and a little bit of control over blending them, and they can utilize that. It changes everything. With mariachi, what becomes challenging also is the same thing because the driven chest voice, the sound that's just a slight bit out of tune, becomes the norm. So again, when they learn that, hey, I can control this, it can become, I can be cause over it and create my own sound. That becomes a huge light bulb experience.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And Danielle, what about you? What do you find? You're also muted, just so you
Yes, I'm muted because I could hear my boys downstairs.
know.
Hopefully they won't be picked up here. Um, I mean, for me, I'm not teaching voice like this, so we're really just singing and worshiping. And I mean, I think the biggest thing really is just having a space for people to be able to vocalize and let out what's in there. And where we are, we're very come up to the microphone, and it's a really interactive experience. So it's a very friendly environment where you can totally get up on the microphone and be way off key, and it's totally fine. But at the same point, you want to be able to release a sound that is reflective of what you're feeling. So yeah, I don't really know how to, like in my position, I'm not actually doing vocal teaching, but just kind of providing a space for people to be able to sing.
Well, that's
And what,
important as well. Yeah, go ahead, Donna.
yeah, I was going to say that that's amazing, because there needs to be spaces like that where it's not about the aesthetics of it, it's about the expression. And you're providing that, which is amazing, that you provide a safe environment. As you said, yeah, sing out of key, whatever. I have nothing against it. As a vocal teacher, I have nothing against people singing just to express themselves. Let it be constricted, let it be out of tune, let it be whatever. Obviously, the only thing is, well, then don't go and perform at a cabaret. Do you know? But people need to express themselves. People need to vocally express themselves. This used to be something that human beings did around the campfire or whatever, ages ago. No matter what it was, you just express yourself. And I think it's great that you provide that for them.
And so, Rebecca, in what you're doing in your new teaching and your various age ranges, is there anything that you find that is universally challenging, or just a general like, man, I wish I could just nail this down because I feel like once everyone gets this, we're in good shape.
Well, I think the first thing that was very challenging was the transition from college to actually working, because in college we worked with our like fellow students and everyone knew what a healthy voice sounded like and what it feels like if the voice is constricted or not. And the first thing I noticed when I started working, they don't know that. They don't know what it feels like if it's constricted or not, because they've only been singing in a constricted space, for example, or the voice is super nasally. They can't even make an O sound without it being nasally, and they don't notice that. And you have to be so creative and find so many ways to like show them and help them to get to the place, like to feel how does a free voice feel, how does it sound, and this is actually better than what I did before. And they are so in there, I want to sound like Adele, or I want to sound like whatever. Yeah, I think that's the most difficult thing, which is quite universal, I guess.
Yeah. So Donna, I'm going to throw it to you now, and kind of in all of these three different areas, what are some techniques that you use with all of us? Because I always say Donna is tricky. She will trick you into getting a free sound if it's the last thing she does. So Donna, tell us some techniques that you use to help people feel a free voice, to actually experience it. Because I know that the experience, actually, once you experience it the first time, that is when we move forward from there.
Yes. First thing I'm going to do is give a quote that a lot of my students say to me. And I've had this from so many different students that I could make it a general statement. They get a freer sound and they look at me and they say, that can't be right. It's too easy. So people, as Rebecca said, they don't know what easy is. They think that singing is struggle. How you get somebody to get a free voice, it's again, it's a little bit of this and it's a little bit of that, and you have to hear exactly what's going on with the person. You have to see what works with them, because I may have something that I use with a lot of people, like that which I always use to get the good mixy belty freer thing. I'll have people where that absolutely doesn't work whatsoever. And I say, okay, nope, let's do something else. Then I'll maybe play around with the tongue. Maybe what I even do is, because I'm a certified teacher of the Alexander technique, I'm body aware. So one of the things I have to say that I do try to make my students aware of is, what are you feeling in your body? And that's another thing that people aren't really noticing. So that's another way I try to get toward a free voice. Now, just comparing myself with Cornelius, he never did that. He wasn't an Alexander teacher. He never did any kind of body thing whatsoever. His idea was once you get the muscles in the intrinsic muscles of the larynx working in an efficient way, your body is going to do what it needs to do to quote unquote support that. I don't mean support and push and pull or any of that, but to allow that to happen. So he worked it kind of from the inside out. Again, being an Alexander teacher, I sometimes work it from the outside in. What is your tongue doing? What is your body doing? Are your abs tight? Are they not tight? Then I'll have somebody literally hang upside down like they're touching their toes, or I'll have them move around as I've done in several of the lessons, or I'll have them do this, that, or the other thing. Any way to, as you said, fool the body into getting a freer sound. So once that happens, and it could be with just a simple exercise, could be just simply using an E or an oo or an ah in a particular pattern, any way I can do to just get that glimmer of something free. Then once they experience it, it's, oh, wait a minute, what's that? I don't know what that is. And then usually we'll try to do the same thing and it'll be gone. Because what happens is it's new. I don't know what to do. Oh, I think I know what that was. I think I know what I did. And they try to do that again. Because it's the most difficult thing to do is to just allow it to happen. And another thing that's very difficult about singing is the better it is, the less you feel. So when it's really free, you don't feel it forward or back or up or down. You kind of feel nothing. It's you're opening up your mouth, sound comes out, and you don't even really know where it's coming from. That's pretty disconcerting. It's like,
I always say, what do I say? I always say that is very unsatisfying.
yes, correct. Because you're not feeling it. You're not feeling like, okay, I can do that. And then, but it's also, it can be really scary. It's like, what do you mean? I just open my mouth and it comes out, but I'm not controlling that. What do I do if I don't control that? But see, the control is a conceptual control. You know, you hear the sound, you know the approach, that kind of thing. So to answer your question in that roundabout way, there's all kinds of things I do to try to get that freedom to come out.
Yeah. I loved this week having, or the last 3 episodes, having all different types of singers, and I know that you always focus on trying to get a variety of people, and for me it was so exciting today to have Rebecca, because I remember, Donna, that was my exact issue forever.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
in the beginning I couldn't get down below a C, really. I mean, I was like, and I was like, oh, goody. We're going to see how this goes. Because when you're in it, you don't understand what's happening, really. Like, Donna's just being tricky and making you do crazy things. And one thing, Donna, I wanted to confirm with you, or have you clarify, is that the things that you're doing, head up and all these different crazy things that you have us do in our lesson, that is not for performance.
Correct.
You're not, I just want to clarify that with the audience, because you're not implying that someone should be singing a song with their head up if they can't sing the note.
No, exactly. However, there's always a little caveat, right? For myself, when I have to sing low, and sometimes being a mezzo soprano and singing with a soprano, doing duets and doing trios and things with an oboe and whatever, sometimes I have to sing as low as an F below the middle C. I know that my tendency will be to want to go like that. So I know when I'm singing that F, I have to think I'm doing that, but I'm not. But I have to think that. So there's a little bit more subtle form of that when I'm actually performing. Okay, here's the low note. Well, then just make sure you're not doing this, because you hear when I do that. That's just my own little personal thing. But yes, correct. I'm not going to have people sing like that in a performance. And you're right. The crazy things and the crazy sounds I make people do, no, those are not performance sounds. Those are things that I use to get something to free up in the voice, so that we then have the freedom to get the aesthetic sound we need for whatever we're singing.
Right, because you get the experiential, your voice has to experience it first before it can do it again in the way, right?
Correct. So when I have somebody sing and they're moving around like that, of course, you're not going to do that when you perform. Now, that being said, I believe she's in one of my episodes, one of my early episodes, Yvette, who sings with the Iranian pop funk thing. She knows that she tends to get tight in her body. So because she's doing this Iranian 70s pop music, she can very definitely kind of do this kind of thing while she's performing. It's totally suited to the music, it's suited to the performance, and it frees up her body. So in her case, I said, you literally do that. Just do that, move with the music, get that little, kind of Iranian hip movement going on and do your thing. And that works for her. Now, if you're standing there singing an aria, no, that's not going to work.
Don't you very dare. Is there anything that you ran into in your lessons that you have a question about for Donna, or and watching someone else's lesson that you have a question about?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask. Oh, by the way, you'll see that Danielle has the same last name as me because she's my daughter.
Yeah, we didn't bring that up, but yes, that is true.
That's right. So yeah, we got that's how Danielle ended up with Donna as her teacher at AMDA. Um, so anyway, yeah, I was really intrigued by the way you're using the ka and the gl and those consonants. So can you tell me more about how you're applying that conceptually and the effect that you're creating with them? Um,
So
'Cause, yeah,
what
for
I
me, I felt a huge difference with those. Then I was never exposed to those before. I love it.
Yeah, again, you've worked with Cornelius. He really didn't use consonants a lot. I actually use consonants a lot. And I'm going to again quote him. I keep the theory absolutely. I understand the principles. I promote the principles, use the principles. Cornelius always said that people who studied with him, he said, I don't want other teachers to be clones of me. You have to figure out your way, not violate the principles, but figure out your way of doing it. I have really, really embraced using consonants. Now, I've noticed that every teacher will notice most people have tongue tension, especially the
Uh,
back of the tongue. The tongue wants to grab in the back. That happens with a lot of people. Of course it does. Most teachers will say, oh, you have tongue tension. Relax the back of your tongue. Oh, thanks. Yeah, that's helpful. It's like telling somebody who's nervous, well, just don't be nervous. Oh, thank you. Okay, I just won't be nervous. You can't. But what I do is I play around with that. I play around with it with the G's, with the K's. What I also have people do is I just have them move the back of their tongue,
oh, okay.
with moving the whole larynx and not moving their jaw. Is it free to do that? Now, honestly, most of my students do this.
Interesting.
They can't. The tongue is not that free. But they eventually, by playing around with that, get there. Then I'll even have exercises on a ya, 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 and do that. Then sometimes I'll do the opposite. I'll say, now just move your jaw right from the hinge, ya, 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 ya. So I just see, is the jaw tight? Is the tongue tight? Let's do that in an exercise. Then sometimes I'll say, just sing ya, ya, ya. Don't even worry what's moving anywhere. So I'll try that with a G, then I'll try it with a GL. Now, some people, the back of the tongue is doing actually quite well, but you ask them to do it la, 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 and the front of the tongue is like, nope, not having it, not moving, not doing that. Sometimes I'll even add, instead of just ga, gla, I'll do glia, which uses the sides of the tongue. So ga, 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 gla, 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 glia, 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 and it gets the tongue mobile. And if it's not mobile initially, then it learns how to do that. It's like any kind of flexibility. The first time you do yoga, you're not going to get your head to your knee. But eventually, you stretch out those hamstrings and then that happens. So that's why I like to use those consonants. Now, here's another interesting factoid. I have discovered that if you use a G or a K, you're actually going to get a little bit more chest voice in the sound. Now, I also use an F, fa, 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 where the air flows. Sometimes I'll do sha, sha, sha. When you use something that uses a little bit more air that way, you're going to get more head voice in the sound. So fa, fa, fa is going to give you a little bit more head voice than ga, ga, ga. And I didn't purposely make more chest voice or head voice. It's just that's what the consonant does.
Mhm.
So it's something to be aware of when you're singing a piece of music. When you need more chest voice, and let's say there's a sh or a f or something that has a little bit more airflow to it, know that that may make the sound a little heavier than you want it, or vice versa. Let's say you have a G or a K or something that's going to give you a little bit more chest voice, but you're singing classically, then you have to know that you have to watch that so that it doesn't give you too much of a chesty sound when you want a heady sound.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, play around with that.
Heck yeah. Yeah.
Well, maybe right to that, what would you do if the jaw is tight and not the tongue?
Then you just play around with it. You know, one of the important things is to really let people know where the movement is, because the movement is way up here, where the bottom of the jaw meets the top of the skull is way up here. People think the movement here. They think, oh, that's where it moves, but this is the hinge. I have them put their fingers here, and I have them feel. You feel the movement. Now, some people just have that's just tight on them. So again, you just play around with ya, 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 ya. Sometimes I'll do with the gla, gla, gla. You could even do gla, 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 fa, 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 fa. And if it's too tight and it gets a little difficult for them, I'll do something else. I'll
Yeah.
say, all right, let's leave that for the moment. Don't worry about that. Let's do something else. What I find is when we get the intrinsic muscles a little freer, when we get the tongue, even the tongue itself with a ya, 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 a little bit freer, this will free up too.
All right.
Danielle, how about you? Anything pondering your brain?
I think the consonants was definitely really helpful. What would you say? So, say I'm in the middle of leading worship or singing, and after a while, noticing like, oh, I'm getting tight, and I push my chest voice up a little high, kind of in the moment. Do you have any tips as to how to kind of reset when you're in the middle of leading things?
In the moment, it's difficult. Once it starts to get tight, the one thing that you need to do is not sing for a while. Do you have times when maybe somebody's saying something or something else happening and then you don't sing?
Yeah, it's kind of
Okay.
usually free flowing, but sometimes I have other singers with me. Sometimes it's just me, and I'm playing
Okay.
at the same time, so I can, pause from singing.
So if it starts to get tight and you do have a moment where you can pause, that the exercise I just did a moment ago showing the back of the tongue, now the thing about that is don't move it's difficult. If you don't move your jaw and you just let the larynx move, now I do it very easily because I've been doing it for a long, 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 long time, but if you do that correctly and get the larynx moving, and a lot of people can't get that moving right away,
Hmm.
what that does is that kind of massages the throat.
Okay.
So in massaging the throat and getting the larynx to move up and down with the back of the tongue moving up and down, it kind of relieves that constriction, because any kind of constriction is that the larynx is going up a little bit, something gets a little tight.
Yeah.
By going, it relieves the tightness.
Okay.
So if one is speaking too much and their speaking voice is compromised, well, voice is voice. If it just feels constricted, I even tell my students, hey, you're in a bar, you're with friends, it's noisy, it's loud, your voice is getting tired because you're just screaming over everybody. If you do that, then that'll loosen things up. I am in New York City, as one can hear, right? So just bringing that up. So that'll help relieve it. If in the middle of the service, if you don't want people to see it, you kind of have to turn away and just kind of go, and that'll actually help relieve it for you.
Okay, thanks.
Steve, do you have one more thing? I saw the breath of speech.
Yeah, I do. I'm taking notes, so if I'm looking away.
Great.
Um, I just wanted to get how you're applying some of the breathing ideas. I know that you're doing some, relaxing breathing, and then the use of the breath for the momentum of the passages. So just a little bit on how you're applying that too, because that's a little new to me also in terms of what we're doing here. I know I've heard it from all the kinds of other places, but you know,
The main point that I make about breathing is that I want people to feel that their rib cage moves when they breathe. So most people are taught that whole belly breathing thing. You know,
Yeah.
I'll bring out one could look at my earlier YouTube episodes where I have the little anatomy pictures and all of this stuff, because the digestive system goes right up against the diaphragm. So it's really high. You can't get air there. And everybody says, oh, get that low belly breath. You cannot get air down there. And when you try to get air there, you're focusing the air away from where your lungs actually are, way up here. So the breathing is about mobility. It's about allowing the rib cage to expand. The reason I have people breathe like this is the musculature being attached to the rib cage forces the rib cage to open up, as it should when you take an in-breath. Now, it doesn't mean that it has to open up for every phrase. That's where you have the musical differences. You just know it's going, or it's going, or whatever, but it has to move. The rib cage has to be mobile. It can't be, I'll tell people to take a big breath and I'll see this, and nothing's moving. I know they're not getting enough air. And if you don't get enough air and you try to sing, you're going to push. You're going to get something, you're going to take that little bit of air that you got in your lungs and push whatever little bit is out. So it's about the mobility of the rib cage and getting a sense that the breathing is way higher. A quick story about a student of mine who, when he first came to his first lesson, he did what everybody tells you not to do. He took a breath and his shoulders went way up. And I said, you know what? I'm not even going to address it. Yeah, maybe it doesn't need to do this, but if I told him don't do that, his whole breath would get tight. So after working with me, I'd say maybe about a year and a half, he stopped doing that. But he still kept breathing fulsomely and letting everything move. So just the mere fact that I didn't address it was the best thing I could have done for him, because that would have made him stiff. So we want expansion. We just want that mobility of what needs to happen with the breath.
Got it. Cool.
And I'm going to open it up. Rebecca, do you have any final questions for Donna?
Well, maybe it's not something that we did right here, but I have a lot of students that are very, very nasal when they are singing. Do you have any idea, any trick, something I can tell them? Because most of the time then they do the opposite, and it's like everything's going down and stiff if they want to make room, and it's very difficult for me to find.
I'll tell you exactly what to do. Exactly what I was telling you about the moving of the back of the tongue. So the ya. Because what nasality is that tongue gets tight in the back. So any nasal, if you make that sound, and notice what happens to the back of your tongue when you make a nasal sound. My tongue goes up and it gets tight. So if you're having them go, and I'm guessing all of them will not be able to move their tongue that way. You have to be very, very patient, and you have to say, you know what? Just move it best you can. Ya. Have them move it silently first without any sound, and then maybe add a sound, and then maybe ya. Because if the tongue is moving, it's difficult to be nasal. Ya. I can't even make a nasal sound because my tongue is moving. You could try it with a ga. You could try it ka. Anything to get the back of the tongue moving, because it's the back of the tongue doing this that gets that nasal sound.
All right. Cool. Thank you. I'm going to try that.
Yeah. Thank you all so much. Thanks for watching Donna Reed Talks Voice. If you have any questions for me about this episode, or if you'd like to join me on a future episode, please visit donnareedtv.com and click Contact.